Support comes from Missouri Forest Products Association, committed to sustainable and sound conservation of the state's forests, which support more than 41,000 Missouri jobs, resulting in a $10 billion industry. ChooseWood.com.
Thank you for listening to this St. Louis on the Air podcast, supported by University College at Washington University, offering approachable world-class education with undergraduate and graduate programs, part-time, evening, and online. University College at Washington University.
Welcome to St. Louis on the Air. I'm Don Marsh. The musical I Do, I Do opened on Broadway in 1966 and ran for 560 performances, and it's been pretty much running someplace else ever since. It's showing in St. Louis right now, opening the 32nd season for Stages St. Louis. Joining me in studio to talk about I Do, I Do and about the new Stages season are Stages Associate Producer Andrew Kuhlman, actors Corinne Melançon and Steve Isom. Thank you so much for being with us. Great to have you.
Thank you.
Andrew, let me start with you.
Okay.
And feel free, the other two in the room, to just chime in, because this question is, what qualities does I Do, I Do have that has made it endure for 50 years now?
You know, I think I Do, I Do is one of those hidden gem musicals that you see at a lot of different theater companies pop up, and it's a show that a lot of couples, married or just together, can relate to and see different aspects of themselves and their relationships in the show. So it's a very relatable, universal show, despite being written and based in a very different time period.
That's right. It's 100 years ago, I think, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. 50 years of a marriage from 1895.
1895 to 1945 is the stretch. Mm-hmm.
Corinne, what's your take on the durability of this show?
Well, echoing what Andrew said, although it is set in a different time period, and so the social customs are different, the nature of a long-term relationship still is pretty universal, and it goes through the stages of young romantic love when they're first getting married, through the difficult times of having children and the husband's career taking off, and later on in life, a lot of ups and downs. I think people are surprised with actually how much the show gets into some of the difficulties of that sort of a relationship.
The entire production takes place in a bedroom, correct?
That's right. It's one set, 4-poster bed. It's actually based on a play called The 4-Poster. And I would agree with both my partners here, and also just say that another reason it's lasted so long, it's got a beautiful score. Mm-hmm. It's a terrific script. It's funny. It's really touching. You get to see these people go from age 20 to age 70, basically, and we actually age on stage. And being in a long-term, I've been married for 24 years, so I'm about half the length of the of the play, but I keep finding things that I say, oh my goodness, yes, I went through that. That happened to me, all sorts of things. So it is very, very much apropos to people who've had a long-term relationship. I think Stages is doing something, actually, where if you've been married 50 years...
Yes.
We have a special going on right now where if you've been married 50-plus years, we are offering complimentary tickets to a number of different performances. This week, those are Thursday at 2 p.m., Thursday, June 7th, then Friday, June 8th at 8, or Sunday, June 10th at 7:30. So you can see any of those performances by visiting the Chesterfield or Kirkwood box offices for free.
We'll put that information on our website, by the way, sdlpublicradio.org. Did David Merrick originally produce this?
I believe so, actually. I think so.
I sort of think so, too. I sort of think that David Merrick is a St. Louisan, isn't he?
Oh, he is.
Is he?
So,
I did not know
so
that.
there is a nice connection there. And the reason I say that is because I saw a quote, and I think it was from Merrick, saying this was a great show to produce because it was so inexpensive. You only have
Two people.
One set and 2 people.
Yes.
Hey, not bad.
And we've actually doubled that. We have 2 rotating casts. So you can either see the lovely and talented Steve Isom and Corinne Melançon, and then you can come back another night and see David Schmittou and Carrie Ely. So we've got New York and St. Louis coming together in both casts.
Why are you doing it that way?
It covers a lot of different bases for us. One, like I said, this show is, as Michael Hamilton, our artistic director, puts it, is a love letter to the many couples that have come through Stages over 32 seasons supporting us and just being there as audience members. So we get to bring two sets of couples of stages favorites to the stage, and everybody wants to come see them both, which we would love to happen. And then it also has a lot of built-in help with what you would already be doing when you're producing any show. It has a built-in understudy set. It's a big show for two people, so you get to divide up the performance schedule.
I was about to ask, and Corinne, I'll put this to you. It's not because the production is so demanding of the performers, or is that part of it?
I would say that it is somewhat demanding since there are only two of us.
Sure.
We're almost always on stage. There are some moments where Steve has a solo or I have a solo, but the one who's off stage is doubtlessly doing a costume change. So it is kind of a marathon. Once Act 1 starts, we never go back to the dressing room. All of our changes are done right off stage, and the same with Act 2, although Act 1 is longer and has more stuff in it. But that is definitely one of the challenges for us. So it is kind of nice to have a day off in between every day. The other challenge was that in rehearsal, since there are two casts, although only two people, that meant two sets of people had to rehearse everything. So we had basically half the rehearsal time to get it together, and that was kind of interesting. We've done a lot of work on our own, as we always do, outside of the rehearsal schedule, but this show required, I think, a little bit more of our own time just because of the time constraints.
Steve, how much pressure does that put on the performer? There are only two of you on stage, and you're taking the entire burden, just the two of you. Well, there's no chance to relax, I assume, or to count on somebody else kind of coming through at some point.
I feel very relaxed on the stage with Corinne. I mean, it's like going on a ride. You just start and you go to the end, and there's a certain amount of faith involved. Just, but
That's a good way to put it.
Corinne has been in umpteen Broadway shows. You couldn't have a better partner, and we're there for each other, and we support each other, and we know the show well enough that if something did go wrong, and it never ever does, but if something ever did, it would go wrong, the other one could pick up, and help the other person get back on cue.
Corinne, what is the difference between performing on the Broadway stage, which is the mecca, I guess, for theater, and performing on a much smaller stage like here in St. Louis?
Well, the main difference is exactly that it is much smaller and intimate and a completely different performance experience for the actors as well. With just 400 people out there, you really just, and I've sat in the audience and watched shows at stages, and there really is not a bad seat in the house. So every person in that theater, I think, has the experience of feeling like they are more a part of the show than sitting in a 1,200 or 1,600 seat, or someplace like the Fox, which is 2,000, I guess, or 2,500 maybe. And the other thing about working at stages is that so much of the St. Louis community, the audience members are so involved with the theater company that I have made so many friends that are stages patrons here that are so interested in the shows and how they come together, and the backstagers and the stages speaks, things that they do between shows for every production. People really are interested to know how it works, and they love getting to know the actors. And it's just, you don't get that in a Broadway show where people come, they might come back a couple times and ask for an autograph at the stage door, but you don't usually get to know them that well.
Steve, you would know this as well as anybody because you've done so many shows for stages, haven't you?
That's right. I think this is number 50 or 51, somewhere in there. Yeah. So started in 1994. About a couple. I'm 24. It's my second marriage. I got married in January of '94, and then I started stages in June of '94. So, and my wife, of course, works at stages too. Ellen Isom is a choreographer and a dancer.
Let's talk a little bit about the music, and then we'll talk about the future of your whole company, if I may. Would you like to talk about the music? You mentioned earlier what a great score it is. Who did it, and what are some of the numbers that people would know?
Sure. It's the score is by, the show was written by Harvey Schmidt and Tom Jones, who are prolific and known for, I guess their number one show would probably be The Fantastics, is what a lot of people know, the longest running off-Broadway musical in theater history. And then some people would probably know the show 110 in the Shade, I believe is one of their shows as well. And the thing that I love about this show is that it's one of those musicals where the story tells the story. Every part of the show adds to that story. It's dialogue. It is character development. It's plot. You don't have a lot of breakout for huge dance breaks or anything. Everything is integral to what's going on.
Any dancing at all, Corinne, or is that?
Oh yes, there's a little bit of dancing. It's mostly ballroom style partner dancing between waltzing and dances of the period, and then some other. Steve has a little soft shoe number that he does.
A barefoot soft shoe.
A barefoot soft shoe, and I get to do a little sort of. It's not a strip number, but it's reminiscent of like a. It's pretty
burlesque.
Burlesque, Flaming Agnes.
Burlesque-esque.
Yeah. But the song that probably most people would know is
My Cup Runneth Over.
Everyone knows it except
You see
me.
how we pick each other up there, Don? Just
yes,
like that.
I just blanked. Yes, My Cup Runneth Over with Love, which is one of the sweet.
We have a couple of songs we can play. Unfortunately, we don't have that one, but we do have one called All the... we're trying to help you out a little bit. we do have All the Dearly Beloved. Do either of you sing that in the show? Well,
We both sing
do
it,
both.
yes.
I don't.
This is the whole opening of the show, which is the wedding. And so it's actually 3 songs back-to-back that take the first 5 or 7 minutes of the show.
Mm-hmm.
What we're going to hear, I believe, is the original Broadway cast. It's not your voices, but let's give it a little listen, get a taste of what the music's all about.
All the dearly beloved have gathered at last,
Faces from the future and those from the past.
distant cousins and uncles and aunts.
The boy who took me to my very first dance.
The girl I used to think was somewhat cute.
My mother's Uncle Herbert from the Institute.
And they've all of them come with one thing in mind, just to see us say, I do. I do, I do, that's all I have to say. I do, I do, I say it every day. I did, I did it just last night. I said it at the church rehearsal and I got it right. I do, how easily it's said. I wonder what would happen if I said I don't instead. I do, I do, I do.
This morning I woke up so early. In fact, I never slept. I got down the box inside my closet where my very best things are kept. Then I fixed me a...
That's the original cast recording of I Do, starring Robert Preston and Mary Martin, 2 names that have significant clout on Broadway. At least they used to. Steve, this is the very beginning of the show. Where does it go from here? What is the next step in this 50-year process?
Well, it follows them from the wedding to their wedding night, which is a fun number. And then my character, Michael, and Agnes is the wife. I think it was called he and she in some versions,
and
too.
then they actually gave them names.
Michael's a writer, and he has some early success, and then they have to deal with what that does to his ego. And and they start to have some marital problems in there, and by the end of Act 1, they're in a little bit of trouble.
Mm-hmm. They've also had 2 children by
Yes, that's
then, which comes with... basically, Michael doesn't do much to help around the house with the children, so Agnes is left with that, and she resents it a little bit. So
Michael's very misunderstood.
Steve keeps saying that.
How do you cover 50 years in 2 hours or so?
Well, I think it basically goes a decade at a time. Like each successive scene is approximately a decade later, so we go through 3 decades in the first act.
I want to mention that the design of the show really helps along the costuming
Costumes
by
and
Brad
wigs.
Musgrove. It really shows the different ages. We go, there's a definite kind of 1890s look, and then we get to the 20s, and there's a definite 1920s look, and we get to old age, and we actually do some aging on stage,
which is really
touching.
Sneak peek at theatrical magic,
Yeah.
which is
Yes.
really nice.
It's
We
a
bring
really
out tables
sweet
and we
moment.
actually, age in front of people. So it's
Then you can take off your makeup and not be old. I wish we could work that the other 22 hours a day.
We can arrange something, Don.
All right, well, get some industrial strength makeup for this guy, believe
we'll
me.
get Brad in here.
Yeah. Another clip I want to play. This one is titled "The Honeymoon Is Over," which sounds like it might be farther down the line.
This is, this is
Corinne, what can you tell me about that?
This is exactly farther down the line when they're going through a rough patch and they're having an argument, and Agnes is packing a bag to leave. And it's actually one of the most fun moments in the show because Steve and I get to go at it a little bit.
This is another duet, obviously.
Yes,
okay.
This is.
Let's give a listen to "The Honeymoon Is Over" for a little bit, anyway.
When your husband treats you like a piece of dirt, when you find a purple lipstick on his shirt, then my dear, it's clear the honeymoon is over, and you better be on the alert.
When your wife decides that she should wear the pants, when she gets your goat each time she gets the chance, then my dear, it's clear the honeymoon is over, and you'd better search for some romance. Time you saw your old trusty lawyer, ask him whether you should find another nest to feather.
When your husband suddenly becomes the swell,
When your wife is bored by every joke you tell,
then my dear, it's clear the honeymoon
is over, and you may as well pack up, move out, tell her, darling, fare thee well. Time you saw your old trusty lawyer.
Once again, from the original cast recording of "I Do, Robert Preston, and now I'm having the brain cramp, Mary Martin. And the original cast ran 560 performances, which I think is testimony. Not many Broadway shows go that far, do they, Corinne?
No, not many do. There are some that have been running for years and years now, but back in the 60s, it was very special for a show to run for 2 or 3 years.
And they were big stars by the time this
Yes.
show came up, so it was really a star vehicle.
Yeah. But they did not do the whole run. They were replaced by Carol Lawrence and Gordon McRae, I think, partway through the run.
Really?
Yeah.
And was this before or after Music Man? And when Preston?
I think it was after.
Well, after. Must have been- That was late
They
50s,
were
I
both
guess.
big stars
After
by then.
South Pacific for Mary Martin.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the future of Stages St. Louis, Andrew, because there are going to be some changes made for the better.
Yes.
Why don't you
yeah.
tell us what's going on?
So we've been at the Robert G. Rhyme Theater in Kirkwood since our first season in 1987, and we are preparing right now with a partnership with the city of Kirkwood to move to a brand new performing arts center that will be built in downtown Kirkwood.
Well, tell us a little bit about that. I know it's a $24 million project, which means it's quite a project.
It is. It's quite the project, and we've been working on it for a number of years now, and it's finally coming to fruition, which is really exciting. The nice thing that it does for Stages is we typically have audiences that are almost sold out. We sell at about 98% capacity for the entire season. And so what we really need is the ability to have more audience come in. And so we seat 377 at the Robert G. Rhyme, and the new Performing Arts Center will have approximately 500 seats. So that gives us a lot of new people that can come in, reach new audiences, reach out to different areas of St. Louis and different sectors of our audience and bring in some new people.
What will it enable you to do that you can't do now? And aside from what you've just said, in terms of performances and productions?
You know, we have made the best use of a small stage and a small backstage in Kirkwood for a long time. There are some shows that I would hear we're going to do this in our season, and I go, okay, let's see how we pull this off. And we pull it off quite beautifully. We have, as Steve and Corinne talked about, we have a wonderful design team, and Michael Hamilton is a genius with a jewel box of a theater that we've got there. But what it's going to allow us to do is look at some new properties that may be larger and need a little bit more of a large stage space. And that's really exciting. It just broadens the categories of shows we can truly look at for our season programming.
Give me an example of something that you could bring in under the new banner that you can't now.
Sure. Well, I'll say one of the shows that, since I started at Stages in 2012, I've wanted to see Michael Hamilton get his hands on is West Side Story. It's one of my favorite musicals, and I don't know that it'll be done, but I cross my fingers, Michael, if you're listening.
It'll be done. It'll be done.
I think so. But the choreography in that show requires movement across a large stage, and so this new building can make things like that possible.
Right. You have another program that I think we ought to mention because it seems very worthwhile, the Jumpstart program.
Yes, Jumpstart Theater in partnership with the Educational Theater Association. EDTA, based out of Cincinnati, did a large nationwide search looking for theater companies to help take the national launch of this program that basically goes into middle schools and that don't have theater programming at the moment and introduces a program. And while that's exciting, what's even more exciting to me is the fact that they are creating sustainable theater programming. So we're equipping non-theater teachers with the ability and the skills to take a theater program, introduce it to students, and after 3 years of partnering with Stages, they can then continue that program on for generations and generations to come.
Corinne and Steve, what sort of value do you see in a program like this, exposing young people to theater and getting that early start?
Well, they are the future of the theater, future performers, future designers, future directors, future everything, future audience members. So it just makes sense to expose them to it at a young age because they then will develop an affinity for the theater and hopefully continue the tradition of great theater.
And a whole realm of literature out there that maybe they don't get to see in plays and musicals that really broadens their education, I think.
Will you be involved in that, Steve, being a local guy, do you think?
I would love to be. There's no plans as right now. Andrew?
We'll start the interview process later.
Andrew, let me come back to you in the time that we have left.
Sure.
Give us some sense of, after I Do, what's going to be happening at Stages.
It's a really exciting season for Stages. We are looking to, on June 19th, we open our Emerson Family Theater Series production of Madagascar, which is based on the DreamWorks film. Then we'll be moving into Mamma Mia, which both Steve and Corinne will be joining us for as well. And then we close out the season with Oklahoma, a true classic.
Yeah, I would think that would be a big one, too, that would be more easily accommodated on your next stage.
I'm sure that we would be able to build a slightly larger world, but I know that what Michael and the designers have planned is going to be spectacular. I'm really excited about it.
Right. You've got to have some place to put corn as high as an elephant's eye, right?
That's what they say, yeah.
And Corinne, didn't you do Mamma Mia for a long time on Broadway?
I sure did. I did it for 11 years on Broadway. Yes.
Wow, that in and of itself is very unusual. That's a long run for one performer.
It is a long run, and it was the gift that keeps on giving is what I used to call it. So I'm happy. I will be. That's I'll be so curious to experience doing it here in this small, intimate theater. So I'm really looking forward to that.
I'm sure audiences are as well. I'll tell folks that Stages St. Louis presents I Do, now playing through July 1st at various times at the Robert T. Rhyme Theater in the Kirkwood Civic Center. I'm sure it's a great program. Thank you all so much for being with us and telling us about it. Break a leg, as they say. Have a great run.
Thanks
so much.
Talk to you. Thank you for being with us. Archive versions of past St. Louis On the Air programs are available for download or podcast at stlpublicradio.org/STL On Air. St. Louis On the Air is a production of St. Louis Public Radio, 90.7 KWMU. Thank you for listening. I'm Don Marsh.
Waiting for you.
Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association. Missouri produces wood pallets, railroad ties, white oak barrels, hardwood floors, and more. Details on the variety of products made in the state are at choosewood.com.